Do you know why some people live their entire lives in lack, while there are families who always seem to know how to preserve abundance from one generation to the next? Today, I am going to share with you something that can fundamentally change the way you understand money lack and the reason prosperity seems to keep finding certain people while passing others by. There are three very specific signs that the keepers of Jewish mysticism have regarded as the foundation of a blessed life. And when those three things are put out of place, abundance begins to leak away, even when a person is working very hard. This is not a modern idea, nor is it a financial trick invented in our time. What I am about to tell you comes from an ancient stream of knowledge that has been preserved through many generations and passed on only to those who understand that money is never just money. I first heard this from an elder in my family, in a small room beside old books whose value I was not mature enough to fully understand when I was young. At that time, I did not think that a principle that sounded so simple could reach so deeply into the root of a person's life. But then I saw it repeated, not first in books, but first in real life. I saw people who worked very hard and yet still lived as though everything were always slipping through their hands. And I also saw people who never displayed wealth openly, yet there always seemed to be a door opening for them at just the right time. At a certain point, I no longer called that luck. I called it order, and that is what most of the modern world no longer knows how to recognize. We are living in a time when banks are tightening, money is losing value more quickly, and many people are living with a quiet fear they do not speak about. They still work, they still try to manage, but they no longer feel secure. And yet there are still people who do not live according to that same rhythm of lack. By the end of this message, I will show you exactly what those three signs are. Which sign is causing the greatest leak in your life, and why the final part of this message is the part many people should have known much earlier, many years ago. Because once you see it, you will no longer call financial struggle something normal. Today I'm going to share with you something that could shatter at the root everything you have ever believed about money. There are three specific numbers that the keepers of ancient Jewish mysticism regard as a code that activates abundance. Those three numbers are not displayed for people to admire. They are hidden inside the wallet, the place where money touches your hand almost every day. When they are written in the right way, in the right place with the right words, the first sign can appear sooner than you think. This is not a joke. This is not a word of comfort. I have spent more than 40 years beside ancient texts that most people only mention by name without ever truly understanding. I am not speaking to you as someone guessing. I am speaking as someone who knows exactly what they are holding in their hands. Before me, this secret passed through many generations in my family, through poverty, exile, and dark seasons in which many people fell. What I am about to reveal is not found in popular books, and it is certainly not found in financial seminars that only know how to touch the surface. We are living in a time when banks are tightening, inflation is quietly stealing the value of money, and the middle class is being squeezed little by little. And yet even in the middle of this time, there are still people who seem not to be swept away by that same current of lack. By the end of this message, you will know exactly what those three numbers are, where they must be placed in the wallet, and which activating words turn them from ink on paper into an open door. But there is still one final detail, and that very detail determines why some people hold the right sign in their hands, and yet their lives still do not change. Now I want to take you back to the first moment I saw those three signs inside an old wallet, before I personally witnessed them create a movement that could not be explained as mere coincidence. If you are ready to activate your code of abundance, write right now in the comments, "I activate my code of abundance." What may be exhausting you is not the work. It is the feeling of working endlessly while life still refuses to let go. You have tried in the way people say is right. Spend less. Work more, calculate more carefully, tell yourself you need to be more optimistic. But the money still does not stay. That is the part that truly wears a person down. Not because they do nothing, but because they have done too much, and the result still does not change. Every time you barely manage to breathe a little, something pulls everything back down again. It does not have to be a major blow. It just has to come at the right moment, in the right place, enough to make you lose your footing one more time. Some people live like that for many years, not empty-handed, but never truly at peace either. And that is the most exhausting kind of poverty. I have seen that too many times. People who live decently, people who are not lazy, people who have never sat waiting for a miracle to fall from the sky, and yet their lives still seem to be held back by some invisible force right at the threshold of abundance. To put it plainly, most of the advice out there does not reach that place. People teach you how to cope, but they do not teach you how to see what is quietly bending the flow of your life. That is why some people make money but cannot keep the force of money. That is why some people work so much and yet life still does not open. That is also why some people are not much greater than others. Yet at the right time, there is always a way for them. The difference does not lie entirely in effort, and it is not only luck either. The difference lies in the fact that one person is living in alignment with the flow, while another is living out of alignment with it. People today look at the amount of money. The people of old looked at the order behind the money. Candice. And when that order is thrown off, no matter how hard a person tries on the outside, sooner or later life begins to tilt. That is where those three signs come in. There are peoples who have been cast into exile, loss, and oppression again and again, and yet they did not disappear. Across many generations, they did not merely survive. They rebuilt their economic lives from what others thought had already been completely lost. That cannot be explained by heredity alone, and it certainly cannot be dismissed with the word luck. The difference lies in the fact that they preserved an entirely different way of seeing provision and abundance. In that way of seeing, a number is not merely something used to count. A number is a living sign, a layer of meaning, a frequency, a doorway opening into a dimension of sacred flow. When a number is written with the right intention, in the right way, in the right context, that act is no longer ordinary writing. It becomes an act of inscription. But before touching those three numbers, you must understand the three principles behind them. The first principle is inscription. When you write by hand, you are forcing an invisible intention into a visible form and making it take shape. The second principle is containment. A wallet does not merely hold money, it is a vessel. And a vessel always tells the truth about what it is truly prepared to hold. If the vessel carries the signal of chaos, leakage, and decay, then it is very difficult for abundance to enter it and remain there for long. The third principle is activation. A number by itself is only ink on paper. What brings it to life is intention, the words that accompany it, and the state of mind at the very moment your hand comes down to write. The vessel, the act, the words, the intention, those four things must move together, and only now can we step into the very core of it. There are peoples who have been cast into exile, loss, and oppression again and again, and yet they did not disappear. Across many generations, they did not merely survive. They rebuilt their economic lives from what others thought had already been completely lost. That cannot be explained by heredity alone, and it certainly cannot be dismissed with the word luck. The difference lies in the fact that they preserved an entirely different way of seeing provision and abundance. In that way of seeing, a number is not merely something used to count. A number is a living sign, a layer of meaning, a frequency, a doorway opening into a dimension of sacred flow. When a number is written with the right intention, in the right way, in the right context, that act is no longer ordinary writing. It becomes an act of inscription. But before touching those three numbers, you must understand the three principles behind them. The first principle is inscription. When you write by hand, you are forcing an invisible intention into a visible form and making it take shape. The second principle is containment. A wallet does not merely hold money, it is a vessel, and a vessel always tells the truth about what it is truly prepared to hold. If the vessel carries the signal of chaos, leakage, and decay, then it is very difficult for abundance to enter it and remain there for long. The third principle is activation. A number by itself is only ink on paper. What brings it to life is intention, the words that accompany it, and the state of mind at the very moment your hand comes down to write. The vessel, the act, the words, the intention, those four things must move together, and only now can we step into the very core of it. The first number is 18. In the Hebrew tradition, 18 is connected to chai, meaning life. But here, it does not speak only of life in the sense of mere existence. 18 is the sign of life force, entering money and awakening what has been lifeless for far too long. Many people still go to work, still have money passing through their hands, but their financial foundation has already fallen into a state of lifelessness. When 18 is written, its meaning is this: the flow of life must return, and stagnation must be broken. The second number is 36. 36 is the doubling of 18, so it does not speak only of life, but of life multiplied and preserved. In ancient Jewish symbolism, 36 also carries the meaning of light being preserved, goodness not being swallowed up by darkness halfway through. 36 is the sign of increase of light that does not go out of blessing, that does not leak away along the way. There are people who make money but cannot retain the force of money. There is an inflow, but nothing remains. When 36 is written, its meaning is this: what is good must not merely pass through, but must remain, must multiply, must shine. The third number is 72. In Jewish mysticism, 72 is connected with sacred names, with the loosening of what has been locked, opening the way for what has been blocked for too long. 72 is the sign of opening. Not just one way out, but many ways out. Not just one source, but many sources responding at once. There are lives in which diligence is not lacking yet. At the very moment they are needed most, every door closes in front of them. When 72 is written, its meaning is this: the pathways must open, the points of blockage must release, and provision must begin to come from many directions. 18 calls life back. 36 keeps that life there and multiplies it. 72 opens the way for it to flow in many directions. These three numbers do not stand separately like three disconnected pieces. They lock into one another like three layers of one complete symbolic code. That is why they must not be separated, must not be written carelessly, and must not be touched with a shallow mind. Before those three numbers are placed into the wallet, there is something that must first be set in order. Not the ink, not the paper, not the words you are going to read, but the way you treat the place. Money passes through every day. Many people want to touch a sacred sign, yet they carry it into a place treated like leftover clutter, stuffed in carelessly, folded in hester, forgotten in haste, left to gather dust, scraps of paper, and old things that no longer hold value, all crammed together with what should have been kept in order. Then they ask themselves why their lives never feel as though they can hold on to anything. I will say this to you plainly: a strong sign does not remain in a place that is treated lightly. So the first step is not writing. The first step is to pick up your wallet and look at it for what it truly is. The place where money touches your hand, where worry touches your chest, where your hope passes through almost every day. You do not need an expensive wallet, but you do need a wallet that does not carry the feeling of neglect, not something tossed down anywhere, not a dark corner stuffed with things no longer needed, not something that goes with your money every day and yet is treated as though it says nothing, because it does speak. It speaks very clearly. It tells whether you are holding what you have in order or in carelessness. And if the place that touches your money every day still carries the mark of disorder, then this ritual has already begun to go out of alignment before you even write the first number. Open your wallet. Take out everything that does not belong there. Old scraps of paper, things you keep only because you are too lazy to throw them away, things that no longer serve any function and yet remain there like traces of a life that cannot make a clean break. Do not do this as if you were taking out the trash. Do it as though you are making room for a hidden sign to enter. That is the difference. When the wallet has been put in order, do not rush to write immediately. Pay attention to what you are about to use to place the sign down. A hurried hand always leaves a weak mark. A hesitant stroke always carries the hesitation of the one writing it. A sign that is smudged, broken, or unfinished can hardly carry a complete intention. So what you use to write must be clear. No trembling, no hesitation. Do not write as though you are only trying it for fun. I want you to remember this sentence. A vague sign cannot carry a sharp intention, and the place where you put the sign down is the same. Do not place it among clutter. Do not write on a surface that is wrinkled, chaotic, pulling your mind in 4 directions. Those 3 numbers do not enter a place of confusion. They need a ground calm enough that the sign is not swallowed by haste. Then comes something many people overlook because they think it is small. You need an anchor point that truly belongs to money. It does not have to be much. It only has to be a point of contact real enough so that what is invisible does not float loosely but has somewhere to attach itself as it passes through the material world. Because that is the principle of every true sign. It is not only thought of, it must be attached. Just a little is enough. It is not great value that gives this action weight. It is its presence. Without an anchor point, many people are only writing onto an idea. They have not yet placed down a sign. And then there is the timing. Do not do this after the new day has already torn you into pieces. Do not do it after you have already scrolled through messages, bills, noise, meaningless conversations, and the familiar anxieties that pull your mind back into the same old cycle. What is strongest does not come when you are already tangled. What is strongest comes when your mind is still whole. When the day has not yet taken away your focus, when your hand is still moving together with your intention, when what is inside you has not yet been pulled in 10 directions at once. But even that is still not the most important thing. What ruins this ritual faster than any technical mistake does not lie in the wallet. It does not lie in the writing stroke. It does not lie in the timing. It lies in the state of mind. There are people who do every outward step very correctly, but inside them there is panic, there is trembling, there is half belief and half doubt. There is doing it like a desperate person clutching at whatever is left. A mind like that can hardly hold the force of the sign. So, before writing those 3 numbers into the wallet, you must enter it with a different state. Still, clear, awake, and firm. Not hoping for luck, not begging, not doing it for the sake of doing it, but doing it like someone who knows clearly that they are placing a real sign upon the flow of their money. Quiet, steady, solemn, and when you have reached that state, only then do those 3 numbers truly begin to have a place to enter. When everything has been put in its proper place, the ritual truly begins at the moment your hand touches the pen. But before writing, you must pause for a few seconds and pull your mind away from all the noise still clinging to it. Do not let the remnants of worry enter with you. Do not let the bills, the phone calls, the unresolved matters, the unfinished conversations crowd in between your hand and the sign you are about to place down. Because a ritual is only powerful when the one performing it is truly present there. The first number you place down is 18. When you write 18, you are placing down a command. Life must return to the place in your finances that has been lifeless for far too long. Do not write it like someone copying down a number. Write it like someone calling breath back into what has lain still for too long in their life. The second number you place down is 36. When you write 36, you are sealing the decree that what is good must not merely pass through, but must remain, must multiply, and must keep its light. Because there are people who still have money passing through their hands, yet nothing remains long enough to become a lifting force. There is inflow, but there is no increase. Opportunities come, but they do not take shape. Light flashes, but it goes out halfway through. 36 is written to resist that. The third number you place down is 72. When you write 72, you are speaking forth for the pathways that have been locked to be. This is no longer the story of a single source. It is no longer the hope of a single way out. This is the point where you place down the sign of opening so that what has been blocked will no longer remain blocked, so that provision may begin to come from many directions into places you had not seen before. These three numbers must not be gathered together on a single piece. Each sign must have its own place. Each number must stand in its proper position before they lock together into a complete code. Do not skip this step. Do not write in haste. Do not gather everything together as though these were merely three ordinary numbers. They are not. They are three layers of one movement. 18 calls life back. 36 keeps what is good there and multiplies it. 72 opens the way so that the flow is not blocked in only one direction. Once written, the three pieces bearing the signs must be placed in a hidden spot inside the wallet. A place that goes with you every day, but is not exposed to the eyes of others. Do not let them be visible where outsiders can see them as decoration. They were not written to be displayed. They were placed down to work in silence. And when you place them into the wallet, place them in order. Do not stuff them in hastily. Do not wedge them into clutter. Do not let the flow be thrown out of alignment from the very beginning. After that, the monetary anchor point must be placed together with those three pieces bearing the signs. A coin, a small bill, a real point of contact with the material world, not to complete the ritual, but so that the invisible has something to attach to as it moves through the visible world. Only when everything has been placed in its proper position should you read the activating words, and those words must not be vague. They must call forth all three layers in full. That life must return. That what is good must remain and multiply, that the pathways now locked must begin to open. Do not read them like someone repeating a prepared sentence. Read them like someone placing their intention into the right sign, in the right place, at the right moment. From that moment on, the ritual must be kept hidden. Do not display it. Do not speak of it as though it was something you tried for amusement. Do not open the wallet to prove it to others. Do not let the curious eyes of outsiders touch it while the sign is still at work. There are things that lose their force very quickly, not because the symbol was wrong, but because they were brought out too soon. Let it go with you in silence. Let the flow do its work before your mouth speaks too much about it. Because once the sign has been placed down, the question is no longer whether you have written it or not. The question is, what in your life will begin to move first? After the sign has been placed down, do not expect a loud miracle as though money will fall before your eyes. What usually comes first is not a great explosion, but a small movement, real and clear enough that you can no longer keep calling it coincidence. A phone call at the right time. A door that seemed already closed, beginning to open. A thought lighting up in the very place where before there was only deadlock. If you sit waiting only for something overly dramatic, there is a good chance you will personally overlook the very first sign. And very often that first sign is exactly the moment when the flow begins to change direction. Do not reduce this to a game of luck, and do not turn it into an excuse to escape labor, discipline, and wisdom. The real lesson does not lie in those numbers standing on their own, but in the order they require you to enter. The vessel must be respected. The sign must be placed correctly. The mind must stand still. And the intention must be clear enough not to sabotage itself. When those things are out of alignment, no matter how hard a person tries on the outside, life can still tilt at the very place where they are weakest. Honestly, the longer I live, the more I see that many people are not lacking diligence. They have simply never been shown how to set the root back in order. And what weighs most heavily on me is that there are people who live very decently, very responsibly, and yet carry the burden of financial worry through almost their entire lives. To me, the deepest part of this ritual does not lie in the ink or the paper, but in the moment a person decides not to live one more day in the old chaos. That is when everything truly begins to change. Not when you hold more money, but when you stop letting lack rule the way you think, the way you keep, and the way you touch what passes through your hands every day. If you are ready to step into a new order of abundance, write right now in the comments. I open the flow of my abundance. And if you know someone who is quietly exhausted because of money, send this to them before they begin to believe that their life will always remain blocked at that very place.